So in the UK, there is a left-wing Labour MP called David Lammy, and he is a race-baiting grifter by profession. His most recent complaint about white people is that they keep going over to Africa and helping people out. A journalist called Stacey Dooley went to Uganda for Comic Relief, which is a charity in the United Kingdom that sends aid to poor, starving and suffering people in Africa. Now, a regular person might think, well, this is an unimpeachable moral good. How on earth could anyone possibly complain that people in Britain are voluntarily sending money through a charity to Africa? A charity that was founded by Lenny Henry, a black comedian in the UK, to help people there who are obviously suffering, who are obviously deprived, and obviously need that damn help. Well, David Lammy found a way.
Comic Relief is a 20-year-old formula that asks comedians to perform and sends celebrities, most often white, out to Africa, and that image evokes for lots and lots of ethnic minorities in Britain a colonial image, a white, beautiful heroine holding a black child with no agency, no parents in sight, finger in the mouth. Actually, if I had my children posing, I'd never have them with a finger in the mouth, completely supine, and I'm afraid it perpetuates an image. So it's not that the charity isn't good, but Comic Relief is doing very little to educate its public.
It's not that the charity isn't doing good work, it's that David Lammy doesn't like how it looks. To him, the optics are not good enough. This is somehow, he's extrapolated from Stacey Dooley going over to Africa to do some charity work, an imperialist, colonialist narrative.
People don't realise that the black diaspora in Britain send more money to Africa than the whole of the aid budget combined.
So what? I mean, I would hazard a guess that perhaps they've got relatives out there or something that they send money to. Who knows, and who cares? If it's their money, if they've earned it, why shouldn't they be able to send it to Africa? Even if they're just sending it as charitable donations themselves, who cares? This was a specific charity, one that happened to have been set by a black guy, but isn't racially identitarian, and so isn't going to prevent white people from also helping black people in Africa.
It says nothing about an emerging middle class in Africa, nothing about growth in African countries. So the image is a perpetual image of people who are impoverished, who need white celebrities who are largely uneducated about the context. And I'm afraid, despite the fact that Stacey Dooley is a popular and has done some fantastic journalism, the image that she wants to tweet conveys an age-old trope that's her as the heroine, that's the black sort of child that's victim, and we've got to stop it.
You seem to see Africa through the eyes of the racists. You seem to think that because they are using examples of poverty from Africa, you know, in order to drum up sympathetic feelings in the British public so they will send them money, that this means that all of Africa is like this and everyone thinks that. I mean, it's not that people weren't thinking, right, okay, this is a targeted, localized area of Uganda that is particularly deprived and needs our help. No, they're thinking, wow, the entire continent is just full of people who are just starving to death. I mean, how does anyone live there? How exactly do you expect to generate charitable donations while showing off the wealth and success of African cities? That's not going to work, is it? As people are not going to donate if they think the Africans are doing great. And so what you are actually advocating for here, David, whether you realise it or not, is for people to stop sending money to Africa. How do you think the Africans, who appear to be very grateful for this help, would feel about this? Because I noticed that there isn't a person from Uganda complaining about the racial makeup of the activists who go over there to help them, or the optics of the neo-colonial white girl who's coming over to save the world. They're not complaining about that, possibly because they have real problems, and possibly because they're not speaking from a position of first world privilege on behalf of people with whom they have nothing in common other than their skin colour.
Got to use these platforms in a better way. And I have to say, the BBC, which has a responsibility to educate, has a responsibility for equality and multiculturalism, is failing if it allows Comic Relief and Richard Curtis effectively just to sit back with the same old white privilege and the same old comedians raking in the money for what purpose?
To help people in Africa, you bloody lunatic. Sit there whining about someone's white privilege, and then for what purpose? To help people. To help people you've never met and you obviously don't give a shit about, David. It's unbelievable that you are actually advocating for regular British people to stop sending aid to Africa because it makes you feel weird or bad, or it makes you jealous of someone's white privilege or something like that. And while we're on the subject of this, right, in what way does the BBC have an obligation to promote equality? That is a specific ideological goal that is not part of the BBC's charter. They are not about promoting your particular ideological agenda. The BBC's job is to present information impartially, and you are doing your bit to subvert that.
And I say what purpose because comic relief doesn't need to exist. It's got to exist alongside trade, governance and effective campaigning. We used to have the Spastic Society. It's now called Scope. We moved on because we understood that the world of disability has changed. This is no different. Grow up, change the record, change the formula.
Stop sending money to Africa. Signed, David Lammy, a person who is black and really cares about those other black people in Uganda. They don't need that food. What David Lammy needs is for you to stop sending them things and putting the poor people on TV, because people are getting the impression that Africa's got loads of poor people, and he doesn't like that. Apparently, that's doing damage to equality. How about you check your privilege, Whitey? Thankfully, Comic Relief didn't back down on this. They put out this statement. We are really grateful that Stacey Dooley, an award-winning and internationally acclaimed documentary maker, agreed to go to Uganda to discover more about the projects the British people have generously funded there and make no apologies for this. She has filmed and reported on challenging issues all over the world, helping to put a much-needed spotlight on issues that affect people's lives daily. In her film, people working with or supported by Comic Relief projects tell their own stories in their own words. We have previously asked David Lammy if he would like to work with us to make a film in Africa, and he has not responded. The offer is still open. Wow. I can't believe that David Lammy will speak on behalf of black people in Africa, but I can't believe he won't go meet the people that he has claimed ownership of because they have the same skin colour as him. David Lammy replied to this by saying, I did respond, we had 2 meetings in my office, to which Comic Relief replied, we did have 2 meetings, but you didn't accept our offer to make a film or visit our funded projects. The offer is still on the table if you'd like to take us up on it. To which Lammy replied, you continue to miss the point. Flying me, a British politician, out to speak for citizens of a continent I have never lived on is more of the same patronising fluff. Please invite an African filmmaker, celebrity, farmer, teacher or business person to make a film in my place. If you've got nothing to do with Africa, David, why are you talking about them? Why are you talking for them, more importantly? But secondly, you seem to miss the purpose of celebrity engagement. If this was a charity drive in Africa, then yes, inviting an African filmmaker, celebrity, etc., would make sense, because they would have what we call name recognition. They are a brand, something that is in people's heads. They have a preconceived notion of, that they have an implicit like or trust of. And it is that credibility that Comic Relief is banking on when they present them and say, look, we are sure that we are going to send this money here. This celebrity whom you know and love already is also in agreement that we will do this, so you can trust us with your money, David. Getting some random Nigerian prince to appear in Comic Relief's advert is not going to have the same effect, and there is no way that you can make it. You can complain about this all you like, but what you are saying is, do it in a different way, because I will feel better about that, even if the actual people who need the money in Uganda start to go without. They will receive less money from what you are suggesting. In fact, you are suggesting that we cut our aid budget altogether. You are, in fact, David, you sound like you're coming into UKIP, mate. You know, I'm all for not giving Africa any money now because Africa is doing great, according to David Lammy. But in reality, Africa is not a fucking country, it's a continent. Some parts are good, some parts are bad, and the bad parts would possibly be thankful for the benefits and money and help that we can send them, regardless of the fact that we are evil white people. And because this is a question of race, now we have to have all of the usual radical leftist race hustlers coming out of the woodwork and giving their backwards, barbaric opinions. Dr. Kehinde Andrews went on talk radio and gave us some great opinions. And if you forget who Kehinde Andrews is, he's the guy who said that the English flag is racist.
To be honest, the English flag isn't just a symbol of racism. It may be the primary symbol of racism in this country because of how it's been adopted and co-opted by the far right. In my mom's generation, it was keep Britain white and being chased down the street, being called a monkey. In my generation, it was a National Front telling me to go home. And now you've got the EDL, BNP, and all these other groups, right? And to be fair, if the same people who are hurling out all this abuse are waving this flag, have it tattooed on their chest, then what else could it possibly be?
What else could it possibly be? What else could it possibly be? What? It's the national flag of England, mate. England, you know, the anti-racist individualist country that helped end slavery, was one of the prime movers in the ending of the slave trade. The country that conceived of the ideas of anti-racism. It's the flag of that country, Kehinde. You fucking lunatic. I can't believe that you want to give my national flag, a national flag that stands for liberty, individualism, freedom, and fairness. I can't believe you want to give that symbol to the racists. You know, how about you get fucked? Just get fucked, mate, alright? Hang on. There we go. For the first time in my life, I have purchased a national flag. I never felt the need to up until now, but good God, I am not going to let shitheels like this guy say that the flag of my country is fucking racist. You are insane if you think that that is acceptable.
The flag is not a symbol of pride, but oppression.
Yeah, I'm sure the people of Uganda are like, oh God, here come the British to oppress us with their charitable donations. But either way, let's have a listen to what this barking mad black identitarian racist has to say for himself.
That's a bigger issue, and it's the question of, like, how do we sell this? What is the point of this? And why do they want to see celebrities? And no, it's not an accident that she's white. And this is a long history of this kind of paternalistic racism from empire, the idea of the white man's burden, that it's the white savior, that it's white people who have the responsibility and the power to fix all these problems for these savage African children.
I love that you have to dig up doctrines from over 100 years ago to justify your worldview. That is not how any of the British people, we're assuming that they're white but we don't necessarily know it, who sent money to Africa view themselves. They don't see the Africans as inferior, they see them as impoverished, as unfortunate, in a position, whether you like it or not, no matter how you view it, that they are poor and they need help. We are not poor and we can help. So what are they doing? Oh my God. Like the white supremacists that they clearly are, they're sending their hard-earned money to people they don't even know on another continent to try and make their lives better. And to David Lammy and Kehinde Andrews, that is a form of racism.
That's the problem.
So what do you do? What do you do without this paternalistic charity? Where would you be without this paternalistic charity?
Well, I mean, that's the bigger problem, is why on earth is it charities who are providing basic services in African and developing countries? And the reason we have the money to give pennies of it away is because we kind of benefit from their exploitation.
Prove it. How do the British public benefit from the exploitation of the Ugandans? You can say that, but you can't qualify it, can you, doctor? You are running on fumes here. You have nothing to support your narrative, and so you have to go back to some perceived colonial exploitation. Not exactly the problem now, is it? Now it's generally corruption, warlordism, and socialism that is driving Africa into the dirt. But God forbid the British public do some charitable work on their own backs. You know, no, you need an authority to do it. You need the government to do it. You need an international corporation to do it. You can't just send them money yourself as an individual action. Oh no, that's not acceptable because that's paternalistic racism. That's you acting like a white saviour. Get their corrupt governments to help them instead. Yeah, doctor, I think the governments might be the problem. I think the way that Africa is being run might be the reason that Africa is an impoverished basket case.
So the idea that comic relief could do anything to really solve any of the problems in Uganda is frankly fanciful.
Except for the people who are actually enduring the problems. You know, those people who might want a well or some food or shelter or clothing or whatever. The actual problems, the direct, immediate problems that the individual in Africa is experiencing can actually be mitigated, if not alleviated, by comic relief. And you are arguing against that because you don't like the optics. Imagine being so selfish as to argue against charity. That is what the black identitarians in Britain are currently doing, on behalf of people who don't want them to do that, who they don't know and don't speak for, but are claiming ownership of because of their skin colour. Black identitarians in Britain are a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Every single one of them should feel justly ashamed of themselves. And I am very, very pleased that in general the response I've seen to David Lammy and Kehinde Andrews saying this kind of thing has been nothing but condemnation, because they deserve it. Absolute disgrace. You make a mockery of everything that this country stands for, and then you call everyone racists. The problem isn't with us, it's with you.